In this section, we are going to go through the Setup page. The first tab on this page is Basic Setup. This tab allows us to configure the network settings for the Internet connection and for the inside network. Here, we have the option of choosing a language. If we choose the language, all menus and help pages will be displayed in that language. The default language is English, and we are going to leave it at that. Next, we have Internet Setup. This is where we set up the connection to our Internet Service Provider, also known as ISP. The configuration in this section will be associated to the yellow port on the router named Internet. The Internet connection type tells the router how to communicate with the ISP. The default is Automatic Configuration DHCP. DHCP stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. DHCP tells the router to send a request out of the yellow port and get the information it needs from the ISP. The ISP will automatically provide the information the router needs to communicate on the Internet. The Automatic Configuration DHCP setting will work with cable modem and some DSL connections. The next option is Static IP. Static configurations do not change over time and remain the same. This means the router will not automatically get the configuration information it needs from the ISP. We have to get that information from the ISP either over the phone or via email, and then manually configure the router. Static configuration should be used when we need the static IP address of the router to remain the same. We would need this feature when we have servers on the inside network that need to be accessed over the Internet, or when the router provides secure remote access to the inside network. Static configurations make this type of access user-friendly. By the way, the information shown here is the information we receive when we use the DHCP setting. Point-to-point protocol over Ethernet, or PPPoE, is used for DSL connection and is very similar to DHCP. PPPoE still gets the connection information from the ISP, but it also requires a username and a password. The ISP will provide this username and password when we sign up with them. Service name is an optional setting when configuring PPPoE connections. The ISP will provide this parameter when required. Connection on demand. This parameter is used to take down the connection to the ISP after a period of inactivity to the Internet. The connection will have to be re-established when a host on the inside network needs to access the Internet. When this option is selected, the connection to the Internet will be taken down after 5 minutes of inactivity and will have to be re-established when Internet access is needed. Some people prefer this because they don't want their router to be available to the Internet when they are not using it. The idle timer can be reduced or increased as needed. The default value is set to 5 minutes. Some users don't want the connection to go down and use the Keep Alive option to keep the Internet connection active indefinitely. This is the default setting on the router. When you use this option, the router will send information, a Keep Alive, to the ISP so the connection will remain up. The default Keep Alive timer is 30 seconds. Point-to-point tunneling protocol, or PPTP, is a connection type used in Europe. PPTP gives us the option of retrieving the information automatically from the ISP or having a static configuration. When configuring the router, the information shown here is provided by the ISP dynamically. We can also statically configure this connection by requesting the information shown here from the ISP. PPTP requires a username and password for authentication, and a PPTP server must be defined on the router. PPTP uses the connection on demand, or the Keep Alive feature for maintaining the connection to the ISP. Layer 2 Tunneling Protocol, or L2TP, is another protocol used in Europe. To configure the L2TP, you need the IP address of the L2TP server. This information will be provided by the ISP. You need a username and password, which will be provided by the ISP as well. L2TP also uses the Connection on Demand or the Keep Alive feature for maintaining the connection to the ISP. Telstra Cable is a cable provider in Australia. To configure this service, we need the IP address of the Telstra server. This information will be provided by the ISP. We need a username and password, which will be provided by the ISP as well. Telstra Cable also uses the Connection on Demand or the Keep Alive feature for maintaining the connection to the ISP.